Welcome everyone to my best browser typing game tests 2019. I am not the best typist by any stretch. I usually average between 70 and 90 words per minute depending on the test, although that won't be the case in all of these. But I figured this would be fun to make, so here we are. I'll be looking at 5 different typing tests and games and evaluating them on 3 criteria. How much fun I had playing them, any cool features, sound effects, music, graphics that they have, and finally it'll be my evaluation on how well they served as a means to actually learn how to touch type better, how to type faster. The first test on our list today is Nitro Type. Nitro Type is a game where you race against other players to complete the paragraph the fastest. If you make an account, you can unlock better cars as well as cosmetic upgrades, and they don't do anything, but they're kind of cool to see your car change and get different paint. There's a feature in the game called Nitro where you can skip the word you're on by hitting enter. You can only use 3 per game, and they're denoted by sound effects as well as a little blue boost you get behind your car. I've played this one quite a bit even outside of trying to create this video. It's just a really satisfying feeling to see yourself zoom past people when you get into a good typing flow. I usually don't play with sound on at all, but for the purposes of review I turned on both the sound and the music, and probably should have left them off. They weren't awful, but they do get repetitive and the car noises are loud and unnecessary, I feel. Some of the songs are not bad, but they do repeat after a short loop, so you get used to them pretty quickly. The game is not really the best for teaching, because you can skip over hard words you don't want to type, and you don't have to be super accurate as long as you're fast. Another cool thing about Nitro Type is the actual texts with which they test you with. The texts are fairly variable. I don't think I've ever gotten the same one twice, and they're kind of interesting. They teach you things maybe you didn't know about raising a child or growing plants or a certain way that something was discovered. Next up, we have 10 fast fingers, which is a staple in my quick and easy typing tests. There are a few different versions on the site, but if you just load it up, you'll be greeted by the 200 most common words. This is by far the easiest test on the list because it only contains words you've probably already typed thousands of times, so you have well-established muscle memory for these words. If you bump it up to the next level, which is the most common 2,000 words, there are definitely some that trip me up and probably will trip you up because you haven't typed them as much, but you can still get around the same amount of speed depending on how much you've typed. There's no sound or music or cool graphics on this one, but it's fun because it makes me feel really good at typing. The rest of these kind of kicked my ass in one way or another. And their head-to-head mode, their PvP, if you want to call it that, is just Nitro Type, but without all the cool bells and whistles. It doesn't have sound, graphics, no cool cars. It's not very fun. And the satisfying typing flow where you pass your opponents, it's not quite there. The other thing about 10 fast fingers is it's not really a good way to test your typing skills because you're just trying to type as quickly as you can in unrelated words compared to forming sentences with punctuation and capitalization. Next on the list is typingtest.com. Here you can pick from a variety of different texts with which to test yourself typing with, and then you just type the text. This one was enjoyable because the texts were varied and they were interesting, and I think it does a good job actually testing your typing because it tests for capitals, punctuation, as well as some numbers. There's nothing special or particularly interesting outside of the texts in terms of graphics or gimmicks, but that's okay. And if you had to read one, I would do the baseball one. It was almost interesting enough for me to try to search it outside of the game. But once you run out of texts to test with, you might get bored repeating the same ones. ZType was a blast to play. It's one of the better games I've played of this style where words are coming towards you in, as a spaceship or an alien or something dangerous, and it's your job to type it out before it reaches you. It was easy at first and picked up difficulty very quickly, so maybe a little too steep for me. Once they started introducing ships that spawned smaller ships, words, bigger, more difficult words spawning smaller, easier words. It was a good game, and it definitely penalizes you for inaccuracies, because if you start a word, you have to finish it. And if you ended a word and then started another one by accident, well, now you're typing that one. The music and sound effects were great, and I really enjoyed playing this one. It could be a fun way to take a break from other typing tests and games if you're really on that grind. but otherwise it's probably not going to teach you how to type very well. Last on this list we have KeyBurr. It isn't as much of a test as it is a trainer. When you load up the site, they will run a brief tutorial where they'll explain how it works and that there's a learning algorithm that changes as you type, depending on what you need most. You need to calibrate each key, going from most commonly used in English words to least commonly used in English words. And you just go down the list and it gets harder, presumably because you'll have used those keys less. Towards the end of my calibration, I ran into Q, and I didn't particularly think that I was so bad at typing weird words that I've never typed before with Q in them, but by golly, this was an absolute challenge. I tried for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes trying to complete this, and in the end I had to give up. I could not get past the Q exercises. If you're trying to learn how to touch type, this would definitely be my recommendation. It wasn't very unique or fun, but it was very novel to be trying to type these non-real words, especially if you have very established muscle memory. If you're trying to learn just to touch type, this would 100% be my recommendation, and especially if you're trying to learn alternative layouts from QWERTY like Dvorak, Colmac, or Workman. On that note, we have reached the end of the video. If you think I left any of your favorite typing games out of this one, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'll get around to them and maybe make another video if we get an interesting response. If you made it this far, feel free to drop a like, because clearly you enjoyed it at least a little bit. Don't forget to smash that like button if you made it this far, hit subscribe, and don't forget to use creator code TimTheTapman in the item shop.